This is the Pretty Deadly Self-Defense Podcast. I'm Susie Kahlich, the founder of Pretty Deadly Self-Defense.
And I'm Kate Lismer, a writer, traveler, mother, and expat. As a woman who lives in a big city and likes to travel, I'm very curious about self-defense. I've never had any training, so I have a lot of questions.
And I have a lot of answers.
We figured you probably have similar questions too, and so we thought it'd be a great idea to share this conversation and put it in a podcast.
So welcome to the Pretty Deadly Self-Defense Podcast.
When you were creating self-defense courses, you probably had some kind of intention for, what people should learn, what you want them to learn. And I wonder, what is your idea of someone winning? And I'm putting that in air quotes, but what do you think it means for someone to have a successful self-defense situation?
They live.
Right.
That's it.
This is my short episode.
Short episode. Done. There is no winning because it's not a fight.
Right.
It's not a fight. A fight has a winner and a loser. It's usually over territory. And for women, that territory is our bodies. Self-defense is defending the self. That's it. It's making space so you can get away.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we think about it in terms of winning, and this is a challenge that comes up a lot in self-defense, I think with anyone when you're learning something new, is you're very eager to get to the result. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're working with a trainer. And I had this as well with my teacher, and I did the exact same thing when I started my training. From a martial arts context, in a self-defense context, since the self-defense is coming from martial arts, your teacher does a technique on you and you are writhing in pain. And you think that this is the result. So you practice the technique on your training partner, and what you're trying to get is the result of pain. I have a lot of people say to me over the course of classes and even in the ninjutsu dojo where I teach, I'm doing the technique and it's not causing the other person pain. What am I doing wrong? And it's always an interesting thing because the result is not pain. That's not the result that we're going for. Mm-hmm. We're not going for any result in the other person. We are only going for a result in ourselves. And I don't mean, especially in terms of self-defense, I do not mean a result of sudden enlightenment in that moment. What I mean is you get away. Mm-hmm. I don't care how you do it. We are simply trying to give you some extra tools, right? And show you more efficient and effective ways of doing it. But really, I don't care. If you've used a joke to save yourself, great. That's self-defense. That's what it looks like. And in that sense, you won. Mm-hmm. So going back to your question, what is winning? You've gotten away. Mm-hmm. You live. You won. Maybe you're going to have 20 years of therapy. That sucks. But, oh, well, you've got 20 years to enjoy therapy. Good for you, as opposed to 0.
Mm-hmm. So it's never a measure of debilitating someone or causing them pain or even, just injuring somehow. It's just about making an escape.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct. It's the way that I like to explain it in the courses is if someone else gets hurt in that process, that's not your problem. You can look at it as a bonus if you like. If that helps you, but it's really not your problem. Mm-hmm. You orient yourself to yourself, make space so that you can get yourself safe. That's it.
I feel like this is again such another metaphor for life. There's so many parallels to in learning to orient more towards ourselves instead of always looking outward and, worrying about the effect it's going to have on other people or, that somehow the external world is the gauge of where we are, and it's right. Just learning how to focus back on ourselves and make ourselves the end all, is such an important lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I mean, I think we're so socialized to look outside of ourselves, and this is where we can often become disempowered. I think this is probably one of the leading causes of disempowerment, is gauging what is my result in the world? What is the result of my action, as opposed to what is my action? Because you can't really control results. So like in martial arts, if we train for a result, I want to get this guy on the floor, then we miss the process. And the thing is you don't, this guy might not move in the same way as the other guy. Right. And he might actually, in the middle of that, take a swing that you don't see coming. And suddenly you're on the floor. Right. It's about staying in the moment instead of rushing to the end. The end is the result, but we're not there yet. We're just here in this moment. And then again and again and again.
Yeah. And that's hard. I mean, it's a hard practice, right? I mean, especially if we're trying to stay centered and, in life and in self-defense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, I mean, that's why there's like religion.
It's true. Meditation.
Yeah.
So, when you created your courses and when you introduce them to people, how do you, create intention for them?
How do I create intention for them?
Or maybe what do they bring in? What is their intentions, and how do you collaborate intention?
I think it is sort of this collision between the outside world and the self. People come to the courses because they want to learn self-defense. Sometimes people say, I want to be able to move through the world with a certain amount of freedom. Some people say, I'm doing this because I know I should. Some people say, I'm doing this because something happened and I don't want it to happen again, whatever. But they're focusing on results. They're focusing on, what can I learn? How can I stop someone else? How can I hurt someone else? How can I, et cetera. And I think what I bring to them is, let's not look at that person. Let's look at you. Not in the sense of like, what do you do right or wrong, but let's look at you and see where you're powerful already. And then how can we apply what you already have and make it stronger? How can we rearrange I don't want to rearrange anybody's worldview. I don't have those powers, but how can we introduce the concept of yourself as the center of your own universe, of yourself as the touchstone, and yourself as the person who decides, yes, this is good, this is bad. Because it's yourself that's going to define your boundaries. It's yourself that's going to defend those boundaries. It's yourself that's going to find your way in the world and make decisions, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if we worry all the time about the effects that we have on other people, I mean, there's a social contract. I believe in the social contract. Don't be an asshole. But if we worry all the time, like, if I do this, then clearly that is going to happen. You don't know. But when we believe that is going to happen, that might actually stop us from doing anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that intention, I think it's a bit of a yin and a yang kind of, I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I think I hear you as far as, everyone comes in with different experiences, and on the one hand, you're answering that, you're answering to their needs and trying to get them where they want to go. But at the same time, bringing them a new perspective on, what those needs actually are, and like what's going to be the best position for them to defend themselves, but also to learn this orientation.
Learn orientation and self-trust. I mean, I think we just don't have that in our societies in general, saying, you are doing better than you think you're doing. And we have that in the world of like wellness and self-care and in a more emotional aspect. But I think, that can make us feel really good. But I think that the majority of people really appreciate the feel-good moment, but then go back to a certain base reality that's like, yeah, but, meanwhile, I still screwed this up, or I still didn't do as good here as blah, 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 blah. As opposed to just saying, no, really, let's take a really close look at this. Look at how powerful you are. Look at what you really did. This is not nothing. It's not a screw up, and I think I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do at Pretty Deadly is we have superpowers. We all do. We're so incredibly powerful as animals, as beings, and we look at our top athletes in the world and think, oh, I could never do that. Instead of thinking like, because I have a body, I could do that too. I may not want to, but I may not want to dedicate the hours of training. That's a mental issue. That's not a physical issue. Right. And by issue, I don't mean it's a problem. It's just, not everybody wants to be, the fastest person or the best gymnast or whatever, but nonetheless, you could do that. You have a body that can do these things. So I think that's a lot of what we're trying to bring to people in general is your body is magnificently powerful. So is your brain. What happens when we plug these two things in together? Then what? It's like, when you make an electric car out of a potato.
Make it work.
It's amazing. Yeah. Suddenly, it's a potato car.
Science.
You didn't even know. Yeah.
Pretty Deadly Self-Defense is a self-defense program developed by 20-year martial arts veteran and violent crime survivor Susie Kahlich. Based in Berlin, Germany, you can also find Pretty Deadly in a growing number of cities around the world through the Pretty Deadly website or the Pretty Deadly app. Learn more about Susie and the Pretty Deadly community at prettydeadlyselfdefense.com.